Hello, hello, hello. Tonight's movie is going to be the new horror film called The Quiet Ones. This is another one of those movies, along with like all the other movies I've done this week, where I've seen, well, not Brick Mansions, but I've seen the trailer for this thing 100 times, almost for every movie I've seen this year so far. I'm not even sure what it's rated because I feel like I've seen it for like PG or PG-13 movies. I was assuming it was an R-rated movie, but maybe it's not. Yeah, The Quiet Ones is, from what I can see, is recycling the old stories of possession and, because we don't get enough of those during the year. Just this year alone, we've already had Devil's Due, which was subpar at best. Then either last year or the year before, we had The Devil Inside, which was a horrible piece of crap. Not to mention the newest Paranormal Activity movies, which the fourth one was absolute garbage. All those haunting stories are they're all really terrible. It feels like they're running out of ideas with these concepts because they keep recycling the same concepts over and over again. And the trailers made it look really subpar. I don't have very high expectations for it, as you can definitely tell. But I have been wrong before. Maybe I'll be wrong this time. I'll see you after the movie. I just got done seeing The Quiet Ones. It's actually a little warm out tonight, so I have the car running to get some air circulating in this vehicle. But if it gets too loud, then I'll just not do it next time. I hope it doesn't get too distracting, though. Alright, this movie, this isn't going to be a very long review because this movie was just really, really stupid and not scary at all. For me, it wasn't, and for the people I saw it with in the theater, it wasn't either. There were a couple parts when the people in the theater just flat out laughed, which you don't want during a horror film. Yeah, and it's not like there's a lot of that, but there were one or two parts that were just unintentionally goofy, and people had to laugh at it. And if it had been like that the whole movie, then it actually might have been more enjoyable. It might have been like I, Frankenstein, which I saw early on this year, which was a blast for all the wrong reasons. It would have been nice if this movie had been more like that. But it wasn't. Okay, so the big problems with this movie, and there are a lot of big problems. There's actually a lot more big problems with this movie than there are, like, nitpicky stuff, I think. But, like, the biggest problem with this movie is how... Okay, the premise of the movie is that this professor is running an experiment on this girl, which is an incredibly confusing experiment. What I could gather from this movie's, like, insipid explanations, he's doing an experiment on this girl to find out, or to prove that, that she's having I guess he believes in like supernatural events, but at the same time, there were a lot of times in this movie when he would say things like, "You're being irrational. Get out of here with your spooky supernatural theories and stuff like that." So I'm not entirely sure what the heck he was trying to do. He was trying to cure her because she's like insane, and it seems like she's possessed by a spirit or a demon of some kind. But it's this guy right outside my car probably thinks I'm possessed by a demon because I have the camera kind of hid. And he's probably just watching me animatedly talk to myself. Thinking I'm nuts. Alright, he's gone. Oh my goodness, where was I? Okay, yeah, the girl named Jane has this entity named Evie that does things, which isn't elaborated on very much in the beginning, but it makes her behave like a schizophrenic, kind of. Oh my god, this was so confusing. I am not being very helpful to you at all right now because it was just a confusing mess trying to figure out what her problem was going into the movie, what the professor was trying to do, what his beliefs were, because that wasn't made very clear at all. Like sometimes he would be very pro everything has a very logical explanations. Other times he would say that Jane is not properly controlling the manifestations of the supernatural events which he is saying are happening. And he would go back and forth on that all the time throughout the movie, and it could just be me. Like, maybe I just didn't get something. Maybe I just missed, like, a key detail early on or something, but it's not explained that well. Like, if I did miss something, it was like a small little piece of dialogue that I missed that made me incredibly confused. And if it was that small that I missed it, then this movie didn't think that out very well. So I just spent most of this movie confused about what the heck he was trying to do, because for the most part, it seemed like he was just taking her prisoner inside this house, keeping her locked up in a room where the only social interaction she would ever have would be through a little, like, slot in the door. And several times in the movie, his colleagues, or interns is probably what they really were since they were so much younger than him and they were his students, they would say things like, they would say it all the time. She needs to be taken to a hospital. She needs to be taken to a facility where they can do some proper analyses and take care of her in a professional way. And he really never had a logical explanation for why they don't, except for they need to continue this experiment, which they didn't have any measuring equipment for, besides like 5 identical like meters that are measuring brain waves through the air or something. Again, that was very confusing, but that's more on me, not entirely sure what it was measuring. I guess it was like electromagnetic pulses or something, maybe. I don't know. And that was like the only piece of measuring equipment that they had to do any kind of experiment. There weren't any other kind of variables. There weren't any other kind of tests. There weren't really tests that were being done except for things that looked like they were seances, where they would have the girl in a round table, have her at one end. They would like all hold hands and say, where's Evie? That's the name of like the manifestation that the girl had, Evie. Where's Evie? Let Evie talk. Let her come to the table. Blah blah blah. So this guy is like the dumbest scientist on the face of the earth, or at least the least professional one. He's also banging one of his students, by the way. So All right, so the biggest problems of the movie was stuff like that. Things that either weren't elaborated on all the way, or they just weren't thought through in the screenplay completely. And this movie says it was based on true events. So if these events are true, there's a lot of holes in them. But this movie wasn't like total garbage. There were aspects of this movie that were done well. The editing was kind of choppy when there was a lot of stuff going on, but like the acting was okay. The characters were kind of bland and there wasn't much to them, but the actors did the best with what they had, I think. And like it's shot visually. I like the film visually because the mostly because of the art direction. Like they had a very nice like creepy house, and the interior was really cool to look at. So there were things about this movie that I liked, but there were a lot more things I didn't like. Yeah. Another big problem that I had with the movie was that like I hate horror films that have too many jump scares in them, and this one had too many jump scares. It also had a lot of just cheap scares that they didn't develop the tension at all, and they just had like someone going bah! And that can make an audience member jump, but it's mostly just irritating. It's like that your brother or your sister who would always do that to you, and you're like, okay, yeah, you made me jump, but you're not actually scaring me. You know, it's not very hard to go bah! And make someone jump. Like, it's not very hard to do that at all. There was a girl walking by pushing a cart. It's usually not this early, I guess, when I shoot these videos. I didn't realize that. It's only like 9 o'clock, and usually it's like 11 or later. But there was a girl pushing a cart, and she jumped a little bit when I did that. I kind of feel bad. I guess because I had the lights on, she was looking in to see what I was doing. And yeah, I'm sure she's not scared of me, just like this movie didn't scare me. It's like it saw what a lot of other movies like this were trying to, other movies like this did, and thought that they could do it just as well, even though they can't. Another thing that I found annoying with this movie was that sometimes it was like a found footage movie, and then most of the time it wasn't. It was like a haunted house too. By the way, not a good idea to draw connections with your movie and Haunted House 2. But it was like a Haunted House 2, in that it was really inconsistent with whether or not it was trying to, like, a lot of it was shot through a camera. Like, the main character in the movie was a cameraman that the professor hired. And half the time during some of the experiments, they would be shooting it through the camera he was holding, but then sometimes they weren't, and they were doing the regular movie camera. And it wasn't done in a way that I thought was intelligent. They just did it as a way, like, they only did it as a way that they saw to get the cheap thrills and the cheap jumps from us, because they've seen a lot of the found footage movies when they would like have the first person viewpoint, and they'd be in like an exorcism scene, or like shooting around in a dark attic and stuff. And yeah, those movies are thrilling when they're done properly in a good found footage film. But in this movie, it feels like it's just a cheap trick, and I think it was, because those were the only times they would do it. And more than anything, it just kind of takes us out of the story, because it makes us feel like we're watching a movie again, which is never a good thing. Every time that happens, it makes us feel like we're it takes us out of the moment and puts us in another moment. It'd be like if a movie started following another character halfway through and then switched back and forth without bottom line, it didn't work. I don't know if I need to elaborate more than that on it. It just didn't work. It was dumb and pointless, which a lot of this movie was. And like I said earlier, there's not even a whole lot I can say about it because it's just stupid. The main girl, it's implied that the main girl is being possessed by a spirit that perished in a fire. And throughout the movie, it seems like she's using fire powers. Very much in the same way, a la A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Do you remember that one when Freddy just randomly has powers of fire starting? Yeah, this movie does the same thing, and it makes just as little sense because she just died in a fire. That'd be like if I drowned to death and came back as a ghost and I could shoot water out of my hands. It's not, it's just dumb. It's even talking about it sounds stupid. Yeah, and the ending I want to talk about, but I don't want to go through like a spoiler thing. But the ending was incredibly stupid and corny. A lot of this movie was stupid and corny, but the ending was almost another movie level of stupid and corny. Like, it's weird that it went to that level of stupid and corny and cheesy and really, really silly. Because a lot of this movie takes itself seriously, and not too seriously, but seriously enough that we can take it seriously as a movie, for the most part, except for one or two really off-the-wall goofy moments that happen. But the ending was just like a whole nother level of that. So you walk, which I only bring up because I walked out of the theater after that moment. Otherwise, I would just been, oh, it was dumb. But after that final like minute of footage at the very end of the movie, I was walking out laughing. Like, straight up laughing, because it was that stupid. So, that kind of sums up how I feel about the movie. It's just overly corny and cheesy and cheap and confusing. Bunch of C words. And goofy. So I highly don't recommend it, but the movie's, like, don't watch it on video, because the movie's about to be out of theaters anyway, even though it just came out earlier this week. There was only one time available today for me to see it. Well, I don't know if that was all day, but after work, there was only one time available, and they're making way for other movies already. My movie theater, today is a Thursday, and my movie theater, shows the movies on a Thursday rather than the Friday, like Thursdays are opening, which is really awesome, but it also means that they make cuts a lot faster with what they'll show, and this one I guarantee you is not making the cut. I don't think it's made a lot of money at the box office, and I can see why, because it's just stupid. And if you are asking yourself whether or not you're gonna want to pick it up, like on Netflix or as a rental or whatever, don't. really don't, because it's not worth, like, even in like bad movies terms, it's not worth sitting through the whole thing, through the whole like mundane, we've sat through these types of cheap thrills before movie just for the one or two like goofy moments that you have. If you want that type of movie, there are other movies with a lot more goofy moments in it. So yeah, that's The Quiet Ones, and it's just, why the heck was it called The Quiet Ones? There was There's nothing about it to imply people needing to be quiet. Oh my god, this movie's dumb. This movie's dumb. Go see something else. Don't see this one, see something else. Have a good time at the movies.